I've been reading and watching some videos about grafted tomatoes and how they're supposed, I guess some producers use that rather than rotating out of tunnels. They use grafted tomatoes because they're supposed to be more disease resistant. We were going to rotate this tunnel out of tomatoes this year because we had seen some disease, some fungal diseases in the soil at the root collar. And we were approached with the idea of doing this demonstration, and I was really curious to see if it, if there was a noticeable difference in plant vigor and disease resistance, because we're still going to rotate this tunnel out, but if there's a way to sneak an extra season in, because a lot of people, high tunnels are expensive real estate, and most of us don't have a lot of them to keep rotating through. And so anything you can do to grab an extra season or two would be beneficial. Yeah, so far we've lost no plants solely to disease. We've lost some to mechanical damage, and we have some plants that are definitely more vigorous than others. But so far nothing. At this point, we would start to see plant mortality from fungal disease in the past, and it's the end of July, and we've had none so far. We see southern blight. So you'll just see the plant kind of collapse all at once and see all the sclerotia around the base of the plant at the root collar, and that's been our biggest problem the last 2 years here. The variety is Geronimo, and it's not one I've grown before. I'm not familiar with it, but it has characteristics that were supposed to be more in line with what we'd been growing the previous 2 years, which was a variety called Frederick, which was a greenhouse tomato we get from Johnny's. It's a medium-sized red slicer. They're pretty. People like them. You can leave them clustered or not. And so far, the plants have performed similarly to what we've seen in the past. It's a nice, tidy plant. Doesn't have a lot of. They started out extremely vegetative, great big leaves, but then after they hit a certain point, they kind of leaned out a little bit. So they're real easy to maintain. Not a lot of pruning. But the fruit set came a little late, but that's probably due to them being planted later. These weren't planted till May 14th. And so far we've seen some differences within the high tunnel because the west side tends to stay a little hotter. The plants over there, we've had some blossoms dropping off, but on the east side they have lost less flowers and seem a little more vigorous. Yes, these are indeterminates, and so we're going to leave them in the ground until October or until something kills them, but we'll let them go till October. I started it 5 weeks. I think 5 to 6 weeks. I don't remember off the top of my head. I wanted to give it 6 weeks because we were starting them in a little propagation greenhouse and it was a little chilly, so I knew they wouldn't grow very fast. And the plants when we got the grafted plants from Johnny's, they were surprisingly small. They said they were coming in a 72 cell flat, and so but they were little plants, and so the plants we started here were a little ahead of them, but not much. But they all caught up with each other pretty quickly. But they were surprisingly small. Now, as far as fruit set, the one thing we haven't brought up yet was observationally, it seems like the grafted plants are setting higher numbers of smaller fruit on the clusters, and the ungrafted plants seem to be setting less fruit per cluster, but a larger fruit. We're starting to take some weights on some plants, and so we'll hopefully, next set of measurements, we can throw them in a spreadsheet and kind of see if that is the case. But yeah, it seems like we're getting more fruit per cluster on the grafted plants. But I haven't really seen clear evidence of disease. Most of what we've seen is we had some spider mite issues early on and some aphids, and the aphids we remedied pretty quickly. Spider mites kind of hung in there. We still got a few, but overall the plants seem about the same. They're starting to ripen up a little more evenly now, but we had to kind of we'd pull 2 from one cluster, 2 from the other. Nothing, haven't really observed anything noticeably different yet, other than that fruit set and size. Yeah, so we put surround wettable powder on these plants and we applied it about 10 days ago. It was pretty warm out here and we don't always get good cross ventilation in this little valley. So to help keep the plants cool and to deal with that mite issue that we were seeing, we applied a application of surround, and so we mixed it up in a blower mister and just come in here and apply it to the plants. And we noticed insect activity drop, and it really helps kind of cool the plants down because we noticed we saw less blossoms falling off after the application, even though the temperatures outside were staying about the same. It gets really bright in here, so like for the first couple days, it's like it almost hurts to be in here because there's a dusting of surround on everything, and then it mellows out after a couple days. But and what's interesting too is it makes it really obvious the new growth. You can see almost daily how much they're growing because the new green vegetation is really obvious. And but no, we've used it on tomatoes in the past, and it really seemed to help with some of those little soft-bodied insects like the aphids and the mites, and it has a noticeable effect, I think, on keeping plants cooler. I'm going to try not to apply it again if I don't have to, because you have to clean it from the fruit, and that's an extra step. This is our 4th year of growing tomatoes in here. We were originally going to take them out this year because we had grown tomatoes on this side, and then we had grown them on this side. And then last year we tried grow bagging tomatoes in here, and it really didn't work very well for us. And we had never done it before, so I don't think we really knew what we were doing. But because we thought the grow bag would be an easy way to sort of, not have to worry so much about that rotation, because if you're bringing your media in and taking it out, then you're not so worried about disease buildup in the soil. Timing is everything, and if you're going to get grafted plants, making sure you can get plants early enough to make it worthwhile. These plants came from Johnny's. They were not available till May 10th. We got them in the ground on May 14th. That's 4 weeks ahead of, or 4 weeks behind, ideally, where you could have gotten plants tucked in here. It gets a little cold still in April. Like we had our last frost April 20th or 19th. This year, but earliness is the key to making the tunnels work, and I think either finding a way to have a supplier that can get you, if you could get your own grafts ready by mid-April, you'd probably be in business, and expect a certain amount of loss because they were a little touchier in handling. They would break at the graft sometimes. Even just like the wind would blow something in, it would touch them and knock them over. So they were a little touchy for about the first 3 weeks. We lost a couple just trying to, get them tied onto clipped onto strings the first time. No, they came with the little graft clips, the little silicone clips, and they had a little straw in the ground that helped support it, but that's it. I mean, they put them in a box and ship them here, and they stayed. I think we had one that had died in transit, but that was it out of 150 plants. Yeah, they were packed really securely. There was a lot of support. Yeah, I think the one that died might have died just because it dried out, so it wasn't even broken. But that was it. Yeah, they showed up in good shape. But earliness is the key, and the way to get them. If you can't get a supplier that can get them to you early enough, you might have to start your own. And so if we were going to keep doing this, we'd have to learn how to graft and to make it worthwhile and get that extra early season. And just keep an eye on your pests, and pest management's the thing. We always have a lot of aphid problems in here, because this is just like an aphid factory in the winter. If you leave everything under frost blankets for a long time, it makes a nice, cozy environment for aphids, especially in densely planted greens. And so the year before last, we had left a lot of stuff covered up for an extended period of time. And once those aphids get started, they're hard to get rid of. So just kind of keeping an eye on things like that. Because then once you get your tomatoes in here, you're instantly going to have aphids transferred to tomatoes. And just cleanliness, hygiene is real important. We when we prune, we come through and pick up. There's still, I came out here last night and pruned. I haven't cleaned anything up yet, but I'll come out here today and we'll carry all the vegetation out and the prunings, and just trying to keep enough space and airflow between everything. It was easy. It's not a huge time commitment. I mean, I'm doing something I'd be doing in here otherwise. Like I said, I was going to grow something else in here this summer, but I'm still out here growing and managing stuff. No, working with Extension has been great. You know, you guys are a great resource and you've been helpful. And tomatoes, you know, it's hard to say no to tomatoes because they're a profitable crop. People buy them, you can always sell them.